As always, very happy right now to be joined by Chuck McGill, our good friend from Marshall University and the Thundering Herd, our connection to the Thundering Herd up here in Canada that we've enjoyed so much throughout the year. Chuck, it's great to actually see you. I know our radio listeners won't see this, but if you're watching on YouTube or on social media, face-to-face for the first time, am I everything you thought I would be, Chuck?
That's it, absolutely.
It's great to be able to see. I know that this is a difficult conversation, but one that is important and one that I've really been looking forward to having with you since we established this relationship between our show up here in Canada on Marshall and, of course, down there at Marshall. When I realized that it was the 50th anniversary, thanks to you, of the plane crash of Southern Airways Flight 932 that claimed the lives of 75 Marshall faithful, I realized that we were really, really fortunate on Marshall to get an opportunity to go on this journey and to be a part of something that means so much to so many people. And you've done a great job of educating people on this, whether it be through the college game day decision on our show or on the idea of what it actually means to have this on campus. But now we are talking on the Friday leading into a Saturday game and one day out from the actual anniversary of the plane crash, 50 years. Can you paint for myself, for Kyle Mello, and for the listeners exactly what the mood is on campus this week? Because as you wrote in your article on herdzone.com that we'll get to in a minute here, it's this thing with human psychology of the round numbers of you hit 50 and it just means more. And I'm wondering what it meaning more means on campus this week.
Yeah, I wasn't sure how that would go. And, this is my fifth football season as an assistant AD at Marshall. So I came here on what was the 46th anniversary. So I hadn't yet experienced one of the 5-0 type anniversaries for the plane crash. And it's different. It really does. It has a different vibe. There's way more media attention. College game day, we're still going to have pieces on college game day. CBS Sports did the long form piece by Dennis Dodd. You've had the Associated Press. Just so there's so much more, there's specials airing on local TV stations down here. Keith Morehouse himself did, a special that's 90 minutes long that'll air on that channel. And there's just so much going on that's around it now. You had the rededication of the statue on Tuesday. On Friday afternoon, you're going to have the posthumous degrees awarded to the 37 players who passed away in the crash. Saturday morning, you'll have the ceremony itself with a noon kickoff that kind of scrunches things there on game day, makes it tough. But then of course you had the pandemic on top of it. Yeah. So only families will be there. It'll be like a partially virtual, partially in-person type ceremony. So it's going to be very different. Usually it's packed in the student center there around the fountain. So all of that's different, but I think, what makes it unique is the round numberedness, being the 50th anniversary. And then you add on top that Marshall is undefeated and nationally ranked. I think the convergence of all those factors make this, extra special.
The wins and losses, it's something that doesn't obviously mean as much in the grand scheme of things. And again, that's one of the main parts in the actual movie in 2006 is, the only thing they talk about is the wins. And it's something that is kind of a theme that runs throughout the Marshall Thundering Herd history with the football program is wins and losses versus the human aspect of things. But with that being said, there does seem to be this sense looking from up here in Canada down at the situation and reading a lot of the media and things that you've written and otherwise, that them being undefeated is in a small way really a fitting way to be able to honor that team. It feels like they're playing with a purpose in the year that is the 50th anniversary. Is it fair to say that?
Yes, I thought that was one of the more interesting things that Keith Morehouse talked to me about on Wednesday afternoon at the stadium, is that, from where this program has come in 1970, and that, the years leading up, they were not a very good team in the late 60s leading into that. So the people who were there leading into the plane crash would never believe that Marshall is nationally ranked and undefeated in mid-November, no matter the circumstances, So to be able to go through as to be back into the national championship picture in the 80s, to win national championships in the 90s, to have Heisman Trophy finalists, to be the winningest team in the 90s, and then to get where you are today, which is an FBS school, make that ascension from what was then 1AA to 1A, now FCS to FBS, and be undefeated and nationally ranked. Yeah, this place, that it definitely means a lot more to have that come along on this specific year.
Yeah, it's amazing. Chuck McGill again joining us here, Assistant Athletic Director for Fan, Donor, and Engagement and Communications at Marshall University as the Thundering Herd get ready for Middle Tennessee coming up on Saturdays, you say, at noon. The actual day of the game, again, I know the itinerary. I'm thankful you're able to squeeze me in because I know the itinerary, I'm sure, since Wednesday, as you say, doing the interview with Keith Morehouse right through post-game and otherwise is crazy and is jam-packed. But what can people, if they're in Hamilton, if they're fans of our show, and they want a chance to be able to embrace this moment and learn a little bit more about Marshall University Thundering Herd football, what can they try to embrace? What can they consume when it comes to leading up to the game and the game itself? Because you say there's all these things that are happening. There's been some great stuff that's been written. And as you say, the show, the 90 Minutes with Keith Morehouse, which I'm looking forward to catching when I get the opportunity, hopefully on demand. But what can they look for here to be able to kind of embrace the experience of the 50th anniversary?
Yeah, so you have Keith Morehouse's special, which is a 90-minute special that'll be available on WSAZ.com. And then our partner, our media partner, WCHS, is also doing a special that will air Saturday morning. I'm sure that'll be on their website. The virtual ceremony will be at 9 a.m. on Saturday morning, and you can tune in from wherever on that on Facebook and YouTube and follow along with the ceremony and get the whole feel of what that really is. But it's rarely, the other part of this that we didn't discuss, we talked about the convergence of the coronavirus and the nationally ranked team and the undefeated season in the 50, but also just falling on a game day. For background for your listeners, a few years ago, 2013, Marshall played on the day of the game on a road game, and after that, made a request to Conference USA to say, hey, one of the Saturdays closest to November 14th, we'd love to play at home and make that our Memorial game, and that's really where it began. Was the next year, 2014. So, you don't always play on the date, specifically on the date, but you pick a date closest. If there's a senior date that's maybe November 17th, you make the Memorial game November 10th. So you can still have a senior game, you can still have a Memorial game. But Marshall's never lost since that's happened. 2014, 15, 16. Marshall was 3-9 in 2016 and still won handily on that on that day. So there's always something magical and special happening. So tune into the virtual ceremony, tune into the game. We got some other cool things like the AFCA champion coaches trophy will be in town. The crystal ball on top that's awarded to the number one team in the USA Today coaches poll. So that's a cool little addition. And then there's just all those other. It's always magic. That's what I tell people. There's always something weird, fluky. You're going to see. I think 2 years ago. There was a 12-play, 75-yard drive a few months after Reggie Oliver died, and Reggie Oliver wore number 12. So here we have number 12 going for the 75 in the Memorial game. There's always some kind of significant number that jumps out like that.
Yeah, and again, that's why we implore everybody that's been on this journey with us up here in Canada and anywhere that you are watching or listening to this to buy in and enjoy some of this, because it is one of the most unique experiences in college football. You mentioned kind of being around for 5-6 years now and getting a chance to experience this game and this moment and having that magic. The energy inside the building, how do you describe that actually being around the team? Because I know from my playing days at McMaster, there were certain weeks that meant more, but there was nothing that meant as much as this. When you're playing against a rival or a team that you don't like very much, or that, their coach used to be your coach or something like that, the drive of the guys in the meeting rooms, in the film, on the practice field, in the stretch lines, it just seems like everybody's really dialed in. And I would imagine that what you're talking about with them being so good in and around this anniversary in the last 5-6 years, that there's just this mood, there's just this drive inside the facility when you show up, that it's not just, okay, we're playing against Middle Tennessee this week. This means a whole hell of a lot more, and we got to prove something.
Yep, and I mentioned that a few weeks ago when I was on about coming in June when the newcomers get here, whether you're a junior college transfer, a graduate transfer, or incoming freshman, you make the run to Spring Hill Cemetery with the team, and you listen to Keith Morehouse speak, and you sit there by the gravesite of the 6 unidentified players, and then Nate Ruffin, who was a star in the movie, a focal point of We Are Marshall. So you start experiencing that right off, and then you start meeting people. And that's one thing I learned very quick, even as a native West Virginian, but not as a native of Huntington, was you run into people and you say, hi, I'm Melissa. I was here for the crash. Yep. Hi, I'm Donald. I was here for the crash. And it's like, you step one, it's learn their name. Step two, I was personally affected. I lost, dorm mates, suite mates, friends, family members, neighbors, whomever. And so, they're still here, and it means a whole lot more. And you start getting around those people all the time, and it means a whole lot more to you. So our freshmen, sophomores, juniors, as you come through and you're around here for a few more years, yeah, it means a whole lot more when you get to this week, because you're playing for other people. You're not just playing for you. You're not just playing the guy to your left, your right. You're playing for a whole town.
Yeah, that is amazing to be able to experience that, and I can just tell the emotion in your voice that it really does stick with you, which again is unlike anything else in college football, and that's why I think that this story is such an incredible part of it. Now, on herdzone.com, which is where you can find all of Chuck's work, you wrote this week about Keith Morehouse, who you've mentioned a couple of different times, and his connection to his father, and obviously Keith is still a pertinent part of the ceremony and is also a big part of the Huntington community when it comes to sports. Tell people a little bit about what you wrote, because for me, as the son of a newborn, I've texted with you about this, have my little man run around the house now. The way that you started off this article, for me, just immediately gripped me and put it into, again, that human perspective, which I think is such an innate part of this entire story of the crash.
Well, it was a very quick evolution, because I kind of wanted to be hands off this week and let other people tell the stories, whether it was a local news station or newspaper or national media. And then Doc Holliday mentioned Keith Morehouse on Monday, and in his press conference said, who sticks out to you? He said Keith Morehouse, because he comes to the cemetery and he talks to our team. I said, okay, I'll talk to Keith. And then I talked to Keith, and I'm trying to make that connection between Keith and Doc Holliday and let people know how much Keith means to our program and how much Doc is very sincere about everything to do with the 75 and the plane crash and honoring them and remembering them and playing for their legacy. And I came home and, my 8-year-old son is here, and we decided to watch We Are Marshall. He's watched bits and pieces, but I don't think it's ever sunk in for him until last night.
Wow.
And we were about 30 minutes in, and he grabbed a sheet of paper off of our printer, and he started sketching the memorial fountain in the center of campus and writing notes. We will never forget, always remember the 75. And I really started thinking about Keith Morehouse being 9 years old when he lost his father on that plane. Seeing that on the crawl on the television, you see on the movie where he looks and he sees, plane crash at Tri-State Airport. And I started thinking about, my relationship with my son and what happens if I'm gone tomorrow, which is how I started the column. And I didn't want to inject myself too much, but I wanted to make sure, people understood that, this is very personal for a lot of us, because you had those thoughts a lot. Every road trip I'm on the Marshall team plane, you think it's unavoidable to think about who stepped in your shoes before you and who was lost, and whether it's an assistant athletic director or a booster or a player or a coach or whoever. It's the people that I'm with every day that's part of our Marshall family that were lost on that day. And it's so unimaginable to me. So I wanted to make that personal connection, and then get into Keith Morehouse and why he decided to stay here, because he could have went somewhere else. He's very talented. He could be a sportscaster anywhere he wanted in the country, but he chose to stay here in Huntington. He chose to continue to honor his father's legacy. It just speaks to how special this place is, because once it gets its hooks in you, it's hard to get away.
Yeah, the way that you ended the article I thought was amazing too, because the front end, humanizing it, was great, but at the back end where you say, Keith says, but in my heart and mind, I always thought Dad's life ended too soon. Keith continued, I'm older now than he was when he died. I felt like maybe this is where I'm supposed to be. Like that sense of purpose being around that program. I think if there was one kind of sentence that I would wrap Marshall football in, especially in this week and this weekend, it's a sense of purpose.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And you'll see that from our players. The entrance is different than any entrance we do all year. They lock arms. They come out of the football facility on the north side of the stadium. They lock arms with former players. And, in a normal year, they would, socially distance. It's not going to be the same type of thing. But the players will come out together, and it's a slow entrance. It's solemn. It's quiet. The video's playing. We have a really special video that we play every year that kind of takes you through the history. And it's different. You're not going to run out and run through a brick wall, but once you're done and all those emotions build back up, you're a former player. By the time we kick off, I'm ready to do anything to win that game. And so I know what those players, going through those players' minds.
Yeah, it's incredible, because actually hearing you describe that, and again, nothing that I ever experienced would ever compare to what you're talking about, but just the pregame emotion and that feeling of like it's more than a game. and then having to switch gears and go into football mode, which is a completely different mindset, reminds me of the Canadian National Championship in college. So we played in the national championship game, which is called the Vanier Cup in Canada, which is basically like, you know, our college football national championship game. And I was the quarterback in it in 2014. And I remember standing on the sidelines with one of my best friends, Ben O'Connor, who was a receiver with me in high school, came with me, played university with me for all 5 years. And right at the end of the national anthem, I kind of like looked up and kind of took a deep breath, as a lot of players do before you actually have to switch into that mode. And there were 2 helicopters that went over, Canadian military helicopters, and one of them split off at the very last second right over our head. It was kind of like, you know, the missing soldier formation that they do sometimes in the fighter jets and all the rest. And I looked up, and there was about, you know, 15,000 people that were in the stands in Montreal, Quebec in that game. And they were all cheering for Montreal because we were playing against Montreal. And I just remember like literally just crying, like right before the game. It was like this overwhelming emotion. And then all of a sudden the anthem stops, and it's like, oh, I have to play against an actual football team that wants to destroy me, that wants to have me on my back and break my ribs and do all these crazy things to me as a quarterback. So that's amazing to be able to see. I've never asked you this since I've been connected with you, but I'm wondering, like that moment of you and your son having that, watching the actual movie We Are Marshall, I find really, really interesting because it connects differently with different people at different times. What is the moment? Is there a line? There's so many of them, but what is the line for you in the actual movie that connects with you the most?
Ooh, that's tough. You know, there's a line where, you know, Nate Ruffin kind of comes in. They're trying to make the decision to not play football anymore, and Nate Ruffin comes in, and they said, you know, you'll have to schedule an appointment if you've got something to say. And he said, I don't have anything to say, but they do. Right. And he points out to the plaza, you know, and it's all the students there ready to chant "We Are Marshall." That part, I don't know, it's always kind of sticks with me. And then of course, you know, anything, you know, in the Spring Hill Cemetery scene, you know, Matthew just does such a good job on that scene, and we've used those clips forever as pump up clips. You know, they never, you know, our fans never get tired of them. They always get you, you know, give you chill bumps in some way. So I've always loved that part too.
Yeah, I mean, the things that always jump out for me. One is the attempt to give back the engagement ring, the wedding ring. That always hits pretty hard. And then the other one for me is the father at the actual crash when everybody is hopping on the cars and making their way out towards Tri-City Airport. And when he asked the firefighter, "Are those our boys?" Like that stuck with me. I remember watching that movie when it first came out in 2006. And again, to age myself, at that point, I'm 15 years old. And I watched that movie in the theaters when it came out. And literally, like, I felt it at that moment as I was watching. The other thing I wanted to mention about Matthew McConaughey as well, that I watched the movie a couple of Fridays ago when the FIU game was postponed. Did he wear burnt orange in every scene for Texas? Is that a thing? Because I realized as I was going through, because I've been reading his book, Green Lights, that came out a couple of weeks ago. And I know he's a big Texas fan because I followed him around for a while. And I realized in the movie, I'm like, whether it was a tie with the green blazer over the top, or whether it was, you know, a handkerchief, or whether it was a T-shirt, or his kids were wearing burnt orange, I'm like, there's way too much burnt orange in this for a Marshall movie.
That can't be an accident.
I wonder whether or not that was true. But last thing I want to get out here before I let you go, Chuck, is anything else that you want people to know, anything else that people should be aware of going into this week? I could talk X's and O's with you, football stuff forever, but this is about much more than X's and O's, of course, this week.
Yeah, no, sure. No, you know, we're going to have a pretty, you know, Michael W. Smith. We made that announcement this week. He's going to come and sing at both the fountain ceremony, and he'll sing the national anthem. He's from here in the Huntington area, Canova, West Virginia, which is a couple towns over. He's a multi-time Grammy award-winning artist. So we're really excited that he came, you know, big deal for him to come back and be part of this 50th. I know people wanted game day. We're still going to be a part of game day.
Yep.
But, you know, so, you know, look out, you know, pay attention, you know, virtual ceremony at 9, flip on game day at 10:30, and then flip on the game at noon, wherever you are, and you know, see if the herd can make magic again.
Amazing. Chuck, thank you so much for helping us understand every little bit of this story. It's been an educational week, and I know a lot of people are going to enjoy this interview, so thank you.
All right. Thank you.